there was a group of us that had expressed a lot of interest on what's really happening at the California-Mexico border and wanted to know what the situation was, how bad it was or wasn't, and really just what was going on. So there a couple of the sheriffs took the lead in doing that, and I'm grateful that they did. Offered the training to all of us, and there was about 25, maybe 30 of the sheriffs that went and did the training.
When did you do this?
This was mid-November, right around the 13th through 15th, I think,
Okay.
if I recall correctly. But yeah, it was mid-November.
Okay. So I got to put this into soundbite form, but what did you see down there? What did you find?
If I could summarize it in one word, it would be appalling. I was flabbergasted with the chaos, the amount of people, the enabling, the resources being spent to manage all the influx of people. Here's what I saw. Here's what I found out. So the first 2 days of the training was legislative and agency specific. So it was classroom training, really, the first 2 days. So we heard from the various state and federal agencies that are involved with border security. And we learned, like Title 47 and the different applicable legislation to immigration and how they dealt with the immigrants. And then the third day, which was the most eye-opening for me, was actual working in the field. We got to work the border with the Border Patrol. And that was split up into two segments of that day. The first half of the day, we patrolled the wall and then went to the processing center in Chula Vista. Then the second half of the day, we went to the actual San Ysidro point of entry, which is the legal point of entry that comes from Tijuana and the Baja coastal region into the greater San Diego region. And at the San Ysidro point of entry, over 100,000 people per day cross that border, back and forth at our border. And a lot of those are Mexican nationals that come across the border to work during the day at various businesses in the U.S. And probably the other half of those people, or majority of those people, are U.S. citizens that reside along the Baja coastal region or the Tijuana, outside the Tijuana area. And they come in on a daily basis to go to their jobs and go to work or do business, and then back across the border to reside. The amount of drugs and trafficking and human trafficking and smuggling and stuff that's going on between the wall and that point of entry is just, it's hard to quantify. And mind you, everything I talk about here and talk about in the information that I gave you further is restricted to just that area. That's just the San Ysidro, greater San Diego region. There's still another point of entry in the Imperial Valley for California, and there's still New Mexico, and there's still Arizona, and there's still Texas, and this has nothing to do with what's going on there. This is specific to that region in this training. When we worked the wall, there's two walls right there in that section of the border. Mexico has erected a kind of a crude makeshift wall along the Tijuana border there, all the way down to the beach. Then we have come along when Trump was in office and building this wall, has put a wall parallel with their wall. And in between the two walls is about 50 to 100 yards of just open terrain. I call it no man's land. It's just, that's the portion in which the Border Patrol patrols and immigrants come across. So what I found out about that was it's not like you think, or not like I thought, I should speak for myself, where they're surreptitiously trying to make their way across that area through our wall and into our country. It's not like that at all. They come in groups of 30 to 200 people, and they come from the Mexico side. There's gaps in those walls, both of those walls, Mexico's side and our side, through the ravines and through other makeshift cuts and passageways through those walls. So they come into Mexico, and then they come in these groups of 30 to 200 people across that no man's land, that area, and make it over to our wall. And they're not trying to hide, and they're not trying to run, and nobody's being chased. It is wide open.
Just blatant.
just blatant. And when you have such large groups like that, that's what's changed. It wasn't like that before. And now with the change of the open border policy since Biden took office, it has changed. This is what they're dealing with. So these people come over and they set up like a transient camp right against our wall, the United States wall. And they wait. And they just wait to be picked up and brought into our country. So what happens is the Port Border Patrol is overrun there, and they are pulling their hair out and trying to keep up with their job. They come in with Greyhound buses, style buses, big buses is what I'm getting at, load up the people that are at these transient camps, if you will, these immigrants, and we drive them into Chula Vista to a processing center. Now this processing center is a series of very large warehouse style size canvas tents. And they're all set up with medical, food, supplies, clothing, blankets, everything, sleeping areas, everything. And we bring these immigrants in from the wall to this processing center. They are fingerprinted and photographed and ID'd verbally. Most of them don't have any sort of ID on them. So if you tell me your name is Joe Blow, then you're going to be fingerprinted and photographed as Joe Blow, so for our identification purposes, if you will. And then they're processed, they're treated medically, they're interviewed, they figure out where they're going, and it takes about 52 hours per person turnaround time to get them through the processing center, then off to wherever they're going. Now what I learned was most of these illegal immigrants know where they're going. They have a target location. And for instance, if you're coming in and you say, I'm going to Chicago, and by the way, there's translation that has to take place in all this, obviously. There's 60 different countries per day being represented coming through over our border. Only 2% of the illegal immigrants coming into our country are Mexican nationals. They're all other countries coming in.
I was going to ask you that. So
Chinese, African, India, all of them.
not even South America or whatever, or Central America.
There's them too, but
Yeah.
only 2% are Mexican nationals, which I didn't know. I thought it was completely different. So, and these countries know that we have an open border now, so they're flying direct flights into Tijuana full of people whose only intention is to come across the border and into our country. So now that we've got you processed, we figure out you're going to Chicago, let's say, that's what we figure out you tell us. Well, my next question was, well, how does he know where he's going and who pays for him to get there? So they told me that they are organizations called NGOs, and that stands for non-governmental organization. And these NGOs are paying for these illegal immigrants to come here and sponsoring them to get to wherever they're going. So the NGO sets them up and pays for you to get to Chicago. So my next question was, well, who funds the NGOs? How do they have their money? You know, are they a 501c3 or what? The United States federal government funds the NGOs. So essentially, you and I are paying that cost for them to get funded and them to get transported and brought into our country. Once you're processed and we know you're going to Chicago, so then we give you a citation for illegal immigration with a court date 5 years out. Your court date doesn't come up for 5 years. And you are then provided a ICE agent, an immigration, United States immigration team, an agent's contact number in Chicago. So when you get there, you're to contact this guy. He sets you up with subsidies, with a United States ID, a work permit, and all the things to get you set up in our country. So it's overwhelming. I uniquely had the opportunity to ride solo with the Border Patrol director, and so I was able to ask him a lot of pointed, direct questions and get factual information that maybe some of the other guys didn't have the opportunity because they were in the bigger vans with the people. And I was just quizzing him on all this and trying to find out what's really going on. And it floored me. There's another thing that happens at the border, and that is the San Diego Sheriff's Department is just taxed with resources. And search and rescue is one area. They have maritime ships, that do search and rescue, and they have air ops that does search and rescue, which are their two primary. And they're doing rescues on a regular basis, not just on our side of the border, but the other side of the border for these illegal immigrants that are coming on. And it exhausts a lot of their budget. They are manpower, resources, budget, fuel, all that stuff, all because we have open borders. And it's just being mismanaged. The poor Border Patrol and other agencies that are involved with trying to manage this and suppress crime and the human trafficking and the prostitution and everything else that's going on are just overwhelmed, and they're beside themselves in this whole thing. They don't want it to be going the way it is, but they're under policy directives to manage what we've got set in motion, this open border and dealing with the influx of people that's coming in. Here's the one that a really staggering statistic. They process and release 1,000 people per day through just that Chula Vista processing center. 1,000 per day are being released into our country through the processing center. And if you put that into perspective, so virtually the population of Redding in 3 months is being released into our country through illegal immigration. It's just amazing. And these people that I talk to you about come in groves of 30 to 200 people and set up these camps. They're not refugees of a tyrant government, and they're not coming underfed or misclothed. They're people with iPhones, brand new backpacks, well dressed, coming in through that process because it's an open border. They don't have to try to hide or anything. They're just walking in, and we're enabling them. And it was very eye-opening to what is really going on at that border.
So what should be done?
Well, I guess that what should be done is probably where you fall as an individual, politically or humanitarian-wise, because if you ask me, and echoed by the Border Patrol, they need to finish that wall and keep the gaps. They need to close the border and go back to a higher security screening process and process to get in legally. So it used to be people could come in our country. It's not like we had closed borders, but there was a process in place, and there was a process for a reason, so we could control who was coming in and know what was coming in and control the cost and our resources with that. And right now it's just wide open, and it's, in my opinion, not working. Now, I don't even know what's going on in the other regions, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. I don't know about those borders. I just know how this specific border it works now, and I can tell you it's a nightmare.
So, eye-opening, very informational.
What can be done? Back to what can be done?
No, impact locally. Are you concerned about?
Oh yeah, we feel the impact locally, and that is primarily through all the drugs and smuggling that goes on at the border and up 5, and being an artery for distribution. So we see a lot of that. Now, most of these, I asked that question to the Border Patrol, where do most of these immigrants, illegal immigrants, where are they going in our states? They're primarily going to the larger inner city metropolises, the Chicagos, the New Yorks, the Los Angeleses, those big city areas which probably have more services and are probably where those NGOs are centralized.
Does that information help you as a sheriff up here in Shasta County?
It helps me understand part of the problem, why I have the problem that I'm having. Does it help me to combat it? I got connected with some good resources because there's a lot of federal money that's being released to help manage some of these problems. So I figured out a nexus and a way that I can maybe grab and go after some of that money to put some enforcement techniques in to deal with it. But does it help me as Shasta County in the big scope of things? I'll tell you, my true opinion is we're giving away our country, and that I fear for not so much my kids, but even more my grandkids and where they're going to be by the time we feel the full effects of this influx of people and our resources being distributed in ways I don't think they should.
There's I-5, but you're not seeing like camps of immigrants.
No, I can't say that I have personally experienced that, or that the Shasta County Sheriff's Department has had to deal with any of that. And not to say that none of them end up here, because I'm sure some of them do, but being overwhelmed by the illegal immigrants, I don't think Shasta County has felt that yet, but I think it's coming.
Anything else you want to say?
No?
Okay.
I think I said a mouthful.
I got to find my sound bites out of that too.
Yeah.
But now let me ask you about the jail.
Well, yeah, there's one thing I'd like to say.
Go.
I'm beyond frustrated with this now. I'm actually angry. It angers me that our country and our government so blatantly enables these people and makes the American public suffer because of it. It's just not right. And it's one thing after another. And, you know, they already cripple law enforcement by decriminalizing laws. And we already have a governor that passes unconstitutional stuff and these laws that just make things difficult for our citizens in the state alone. But when I look at this as globally as a country, it's disheartening.
It's not downright scary.
It is.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm past frustration. I'm angry about it. And we're pushing back as hard as we can as the state sheriffs with the legislation and California administration, but to no avail so far.